Trying to keep good boundaries with a spouse who has a substance abuse problem can get really complicated. Are you doing it right? Are your boundaries healthy and appropriate? Let's find out together. I got a little pop quiz for you here. Now, I think there are some common kind of topics or hot topic issues when it comes to being in a marriage, especially when someone has a substance abuse problem. And I've broken that down for you into 3 big categories. There's money, which is always a big category, right? There's household responsibilities and who does what. And then there are things like safety issues, which can include things like driving. So I'm going to give you some examples of boundaries in each category. And as we go through this, I want you to identify the boundaries that are the appropriate boundaries. So I'm talking about the ones that are articulated in the right way. First up, let's talk about driving. I'm going to give you 4 driving boundaries examples. Now, as we go through these, you put in the comments which of these boundaries are the right ones. Boundary number 1. I'm not going to allow you to drive our kids if I think you've been drinking. Boundary number 2. You're not going to leave this house in our car when you've been drinking. Number 3. I'm not going to provide insurance under my name if I think that you're likely to drive intoxicated. Boundary number 4. Please do not drive home drinking. It makes me a nervous wreck. I'm so scared you're going to hurt yourself or someone else. Please just call me instead. So which of those boundaries, and it can be one or more than one, do you think was an appropriate boundary? Let me know in the comments below, and we're going to move on to the money boundaries. Now again, I'm going to give you an example of 4 different money boundaries, and I want you to find the one or ones that are appropriate. Number 1, you're not going to waste my money buying alcohol anymore. Number 2, I'll continue to pay your car payment as long as you're going to at least 3 AA meetings a week. Number 3, I will no longer be paying your car payment. Example number 4, you have to get a job if you want to keep living in this home. All right, which one or ones of those are the appropriate boundaries? Moving on to household responsibilities. Number 1, from now on, you're washing your own laundry. I am sick of smelling your clothes. It just smells like alcohol and it's nasty. Number 2, smelling alcohol on your clothes is a real trigger for me. And when I get triggered, I end up taking it out on everyone else. So from now on, I'm not going to be doing your laundry. Number 3, I will no longer be cleaning up the dishes from your late night drinking and cooking episodes. Number 4, you need to be responsible for your own messes. Which one or ones of those are appropriate boundaries? Now, if you want to know the answer to that, I want you to watch this video next because I'm going to go over each and every one of those boundaries and tell you why they either are or are not appropriate. So, Felice, how long have you been married to LT?
Married 12 years, together 14 years.
Okay. And so, did LT already have a substance abuse problem when you met him?
No. So he had told me about his history with meth addiction and stuff prior to when I met him. And when I met him, he was fresh and clean, and the only thing that he ever did was smoke. That was it. And that wasn't an issue.
Okay.
That's why I hesitant no, because he did smoke for me, but it wasn't a problem.
Right, but it wasn't like you walked into the situation in like full-blown addiction mode or anything like that.
Right. He had his life together. He had 2 boys he was raising, the most gorgeous boys I'd ever seen.
Mm-hmm.
He had a job, and I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, this guy's awesome. Yeah.
And you knew he had like a history where he had some problems in the past, but I'm guessing it's one thing to hear about it. It's another thing to witness it, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So, because the guy he would tell me about was just this mythical guy in these stories, because it was nothing like the guy that I knew. The guy I knew was this awesome, amazing dad and just had his stuff together. He had a house. This must have just been some crazy thing that you did in your past, and now
you were young and you were wild.
Yeah.
That's what you thought in your head. Okay. And you got your life together. And then when did you start to see little inklings of trouble? Like, when did things start to brew?
So he smoked weed for a while, and it, how weed is, it kept him nice and calm, and that's who I knew. But then he had to quit when he got a government job because they did drug testing, and then that's when he went from weed to alcohol. And then the alcohol would go kind of up and down. Like he'd drink on the weekends, and then he'd drink every night, and then we'd be like, all right, that's enough drinking, we'll stop. And we'd stop for a while, and then he'd do it again, start on the weekends, and then it would increase, and then he'd stop for a while, and that happened for a few years. And then 3 years ago, before my boy, because my boy was in an accident, but 3 years ago, right before that, is when I really started seeing it was like a problem. Because
Okay.
I'd never ever seen him blackout drunk. He'd never stumble. He always held his liquor well. But that was the point where he'd start to stumble, and we'd have to help him in the house. And that was about when he fell down the stairs. And
And it really started showing itself then.
yeah.
So let me, I want to say hey to Marilyn, who's saying hey. Hey, Kieran, thank you. Hopefully my microphone's a little better now. And then Ashley's got a comment that says her husband's an addict. And he was when I married him, but after a year, I don't know if I can stay. He's relapsed again and stolen from me. So if this is Ashley, she's saying basically he's in a relapse and she just doesn't know if she can take it anymore. I can definitely understand where you come from, and I know Felice can even better than I can, Ashley.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So LT was, I feel like we were a special case of addict, because most addicts will lie and cheat and steal, and they don't want nobody to know. But with LT and me, he was very open and honest to me. Like he was like, this is how much I'm drinking. I'm gonna drink this tonight. And he never hid it. And I always knew how much he was gonna drink, and he never stole because it was his money. Like,
Right.
And so I never experienced that part of addiction like a lot of other people did.
Do you think, Felice, is that a characteristic of LT, just to sort of be all out and honest with it, or is that a characteristic of yours? Because I know you're pretty laid back. Like you're the kind of person you could tell that to without
getting yelled at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's probably both. He hates lying. Like just broken relationships and things, like lying is one thing he absolutely loathes. So he won't lie.
Okay.
He won't lie to me.
So it's kind of a both qualities. He hates lying, and then you're pretty calm and non-reactive in general. And so you guys had an honesty about you. Hey, Derek, thank you. Thank you for the positive feedback. Hey, Aaron.
Hey, Carrie.
And so let's go back to this before it was bad, but where it was like it would kind of get out of hand or too frequently, but then get better. Because I see a lot of people in my office that are sort of to that stage. I call that stage 3. And so it's like difficulty controlling it once I start is what I call that stage.
Yeah.
Tell us about that. What would happen that you guys would be like, let's rein it back? Or was that all just LT? Was it just the frequency, or would things happen?
I think it was just both. It would just turn into weekends would turn into weekdays. I'm like, I can't do all the time. So then he'd be like, okay, I can quit for a little while. And then it would start weekends again, because he had lots of friends and they like to drink Corona. That was like their thing. Corona times. And they'd come over and hang out, just the social drinking. But then it would be like he would just drink by himself at night, and I'd be like, well, we're not hanging out, so you just scale it back, and he'd be like, yeah. And then he'd scale back for a while, and then the cycle would start over again.
Okay.
But
when you met him and he was sort of doing really well, and he told you about his past, at that time, did he see himself, or did you see him as an addict or a person in recovery, or was it more just like he was just had a wild past and he got it together?
Yeah, just he had a wild past and got it together.
Okay.
And I don't know. Like, I'm used to being around drinkers, so it wasn't anything different. You know what I mean? Like my whole family's drinks, and so it just seemed normal, I guess, until it would get to the point where, like a few years ago, when he would get to the point where he was stumbling drunk, and I was like, whoa, this is becoming an issue. Like, you're going to need help now.
When do you think was the first time it occurred to your mind, like, oh my gosh, I'm dealing with someone who has alcohol problem?
Right before the accident, when he was, because I did become very codependent or co-addict or whatever, and I would saw myself getting sucked into it, and I would check our bank account all the time, and I would show him, I'd be like, look, 2017, you only spent $1,000 that year. 20 or yeah, whatever. I'm just making up years. Don't.
Mm-hmm.
But then like one year, it's like we're at $3,000 this year at the liquor store. I'm like, there's a problem now.
Uh-huh.
So I try and like point those things out, and just he was like he would just drink by himself and lock himself in the basement, and I'm like, this is becoming an issue.
What would he say when you would break out the bank statements? I like your accountant,
Like,
your spreadsheet version of. I think we have a problem. It's so organized over there. I love it.
yeah,
What would he do when you would bring those out?
he would be like, yeah, you're right. Like, I do have a problem. And then that's when he'd be like, I'll try and taper off. And
Okay.
then he would try and taper, and that wouldn't work. And I think he was just getting frustrated with himself too, because the tapering wasn't working, but in his mind it should, or something. I'm not really sure. I can't speak.
Right. Tapering is one of those things that sounds good in philosophy, but doesn't really work in reality.
Yeah.
At least not for the people that come to me.
Yeah. He wanted to do it by himself first. And I was like, okay, if you think you can taper, that's great. And I'd give him resources. I'm like, here's a research thing on how to taper. Maybe this will work. So he'd try that, or he'd be like, I'll just do like a pint, and then I'll go a little bit, and then I'll make this one last a week. And that never worked, because once he drank, it was game on.
Yeah.
And then that was when I would start to just plant it in his ear. I'm like, maybe you can't quit on your own. You might have to go to detox, and started just planting seeds of maybe detox is an option, because it's not working. And then that was when the last time he tried to taper is when he told me to not ask him about it anymore, and he'd take care of it himself.
Okay. He basically said, butt out.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest with my feelings on this. He said,
TJ is up here, and he says that's how his girlfriend came at him with those bank statements. Oh, so that's like a whole thing. Look, not that's such an objective way to come at it. I love it. Just so
come at him with
calm and logical. So great.
It's an issue. Look at this $2,000 jump.
Like, the evidence, right?
Yeah.
Exhibit A. Yeah. Like a laser pointer or something.
Too, I guess, because you can't prove it any other way. Really. Try and bring out the facts, because your feelings don't really seem to matter sometimes.
That's a good point, Felice, because when I hear you tell the story, you just sound so calm and understanding and patient and kind, like a saint. Were you like that the whole time?
So I was very kind and patient, understanding, until he would drink and push my buttons.
Oh, okay.
You know, they know exactly how to get under your skin, and they know exactly what buttons to push to be instant angry. And I really was very calm and understanding, and didn't hit those buttons for a long time, until just a piece of me just was like, this is enough. I've had enough. And then that's when I would get angry and do things like throw laundry baskets that I probably shouldn't have thrown. There was some fights that we shouldn't have had.
I bet you're like a lot of people who are like really calm, and it takes a lot to get them mad, but once they get mad, it's like scary town.
It's like game on. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been like all in there the whole time. Yeah, I bet you're like
definitely not a saint in that area, because and then I had to realize he knew exactly what buttons to push, and try and like control myself. And then at that's the point when his sister lives up the street, and that's when I would just leave, because you can't reason with someone who's drunk. They just keep saying the same thing over and over again, and you don't even know why you're in trouble. And so you're arguing a point, and it's just irrational. And that's when I'd get frustrated and angry, because I'm like, you're not listening to me. You can't hear me. And that's what would make me angry, is the fact that he wasn't understanding other side, I guess,
Right.
my thought process. And it was just,
Well, when you're dealing with like late stage addiction, you're really dealing with like delusion. Donna is saying that her ex would get belligerent and then say not to worry about it, and he deserved it after working so hard. I've heard that one a super ton.
yeah, not
Yeah.
worry about the drinking
Mhm.
because he deserved it. Yeah.
Yeah, Donna, I see a lot of guys in my office that are alcoholics, and they, for the most part, they're like really successful guys, real smart, real successful doctors, businessmen. And so they're like, I work hard, I take care of this family, and they feel like because of that, it's out of bounds. Like they have every right to do that, and so they're particularly difficult to deal with. Yeah.